Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the new spells included in the D&D Player's Handbook 2024 All-in-One Beyond mod by Yoonmoonsik. This includes 130 new spells from a variety of different sources based on the 2024 Player's Handbook. This also includes spells from the new Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun, yes that's Karlach and Minsk on the cover, and places like the Crooked Moon campaign. And it'll also be showing off the popular Sangromancer Wizard here, and it has some very popular spells like things like Bigsby's Hand, which people have been asking for a very long time. And yes, this is actually now available on console. And this mod also adds in 4 new classes with the Gunslinger, Artificer, Scion, and Illrigger. And the Gunslinger even comes with 6 different subclasses, and there's 30 total subclasses that are added in this mod. I have some separate videos breaking all that down because this mod adds so much new content to the game and unique VFX here. You see my character's got blood wisps surrounding them there with this cool red VFX. And I'll be honest, there is a lot of spells, with many that are very popular, like the Sword Burst Cantrip and Steel Wind Strike, letting you do a 60-10 of force damage to 5 different targets. This mod also implements some other changes, like the blood dice here, or hit point dice, which you can use to recover your health. And I also want to mention this mod does come with a lot of different balance changes, which makes some of the weaker classes stronger and reduces some of the homebrew changes that came with Larian, like the condition Chilled and Wet, which doubles lightning and cold damage. The Resonant Stone Steeped in Bliss now doesn't create the double damage for Psychic either, and you can only cast 1 spell per turn. Haste does not give you the extra abilities that it previously used to, so some pretty big balance changes. You can't cheese it. But with that out of the way, I want to start off with cantrips with things like the Finger Guns cantrip here, which is amazing. Now, there's also changes to the base game cantrips and spells, but that's a separate video because there's a lot of changes there as well. There'll be many series of videos on this mod in particular, just because of the large amount of changes. And I think it's really interesting to see the 2024 Player Handbook rule set now on console and PC. But I'm going to start off again with cantrips here. Bloodbolt is a necromancy cantrip here, and I really like this one because you do a 1d6 of necrotic damage, and you gain a number of temporary health hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. It's not much at the start of the game, but at the end of the game either, but it's nice sustainability that you normally would not have. Next is Concealed Shot. This is an illusion cantrip meant to be used when you're playing something like the Gunslinger. This mod also adds in muskets and pistol-style weapons into the game. And they also have to reload themselves too, which is a bit of a change for things like crossbows. But for the duration, when you make a ranged attack with this, the weapon or ammunition becomes invisible while in flight, and the weapon becomes silent. The weapon or projectile becomes visible again after it hits or misses. If you're hidden and your attack misses, you do not get revealed. So this is good on like the Dead Eye version of the Gunslinger. It just lets you do some stealth attacks from range. We also got Concussion, doing 1d8 of thunder damage. This is just a Constitution save, and it's an evocation cantrip, which is nice for some wizards. Finger Guns, love this one. This is an evocation cantrip. Extend your forefinger and thumb, a dangerous gesture making a gun. And if you're wondering where this cantrip comes from, it's from Valda's Spire of Secrets player pack. And I do want to quickly mention too that you can find out where any of these spells are coming from by checking out the GitHub link that is tagged in the mod description. But yeah, awesome cantrip. And you saw it there to start. Green Flame Blade, a very popular one. This will make the target take additional fire damage. And it's almost like a chain lightning. It does a little extra fire damage to targets that you can see near the target you hit. Great spell. This is an awesome one. I really like the Hellfire cantrip here. This does 1d4 of fire and necrotic damage, which you can notice is less than Firebolt. But the cool thing is this is an Illrigger cantrip, and it's a bit of a different flair because it's a charisma save. It's not an attack roll like you do with a Firebolt. So saving throws are typically going to be a little bit better in certain instances, and from what I've seen in this mod, it's nice to have something like that. Lightning Lure, very popular, pulls the target 3 meters closer, kind of like the Thorn Whip cantrip. Mind Sliver, this is an amazing one, a 1d6 is psychic, although psychic damage takes a big nerf in this mod. It also will subtract 1d4 from the next saving throw before the end of our next turn. We also have things like Prestidigitation here, which you can create a magical effect within range. The Sword Burst cantrip, doing a 1d6 of force damage, and all creatures within 5 feet of us will do that dexterity save or take it, so it's an area of effect spell in our immediate area. Thunderclap, emanate a 5-foot radius, and the targets will take 1d6 of thunder damage, so a little bit similar to the Sword Burst there. And Vengeful Blade, strike with your weapon, afflicting your target with a dark energy that hurts them for a 1d8 of necrotic when they attack or cast a spell. So here is the Hellfire cantrip here, so someone similar does a fiery attack, and it's got like the necrotic casting there, so you see the black ball of energy. It's normally when you cast a necrotic damage spell, so kind of similar to Firebolt. I love that it's a charisma save, really great for the Illrigger class. Now, Bloodbolt here is really cool because when you attack a target with this one, it's going to give you health back. There's also Heroic Inspirations. That's for another video here, but it's cool because it makes a chain between you and the target, and then you get your proficiency bonus back as temporary health there. So, yeah, we got a couple health there. Unfortunately, hit him with the necrotic damage spell. And yeah, it's a nice one again for the sustain. And prestidigitation here is actually kind of nice if you need a torch or something or need to clean a target. So that's what you can do with this cantrip, create a light or create a little campfire here. Kind of good for just outside of combat utility. Now the druid also gets some new cantrips and spells here with things like primal savagery doing acid damage as an attack. Now you may notice a lot of these are similar to Mr. Spells, as that is also based on similar books. The Spare the Dying cantrip here, choose a creature within range that has 0 health and hit points and is not dead. That creature regains 1 hit point. Starry Wisp is a pretty nice cantrip, so you can attack with this one doing a 1d8 of radiant damage, and it's going to create a dim light surface on the target in a 10-foot radius. And they also cannot turn invisible. And we also got things like the Thunderclap and Concussion here. The Cleric gets access to Words of Radiance, which is like our Thunderclap or Sword Burst cantrip, that 5-meter radius around ourselves, and then we do radiant damage in that area. The Sorcerer also gets Sorcerer's Burst. You can cast Sorcerer's Energy at one creature, make a ranged attack roll on hit that takes a 1d8 of a damage type that we choose, of whatever of those elements that we want. The Sorcerer did get some nice changes. Also, at level 1, they get things like the Innate Sorcery, giving them an advantage on spell attack rolls and a +1 to spell save DC. The Sorcerer actually has some pretty nice changes here, and having a unique cantrip here makes them feel like they have their own identity. And here is our Green Flame Blade cantrip. So yes, it does make the weapon glow with a green appearance here, and gives you that attack there. Pretty nice. Again, the fire is pretty useful. Concealed Shot's nice because, again, you can pop this here, and this is going to give us the invisible weapon, which then lets us attack with a special invisible weapon here. Affected entity cannot be disarmed, advantage on attack rolls, and scores a critical hit when rolling a 19. So that's really nice. There is other invisible base weapons in the game. I love that it turns the bow actually invisible there. So Concealed Shot, illusionary cantrip. And then Sword Burst here does that small area of effect. This is similar to the Thunderclap as well as the Word of Radiance, and then just a little burst there. And I'm pretty sure this effect here is from one of the temporary health spells. No, I figured it out. It's Dancing Lights. So similar VFX here. I can kind of identify some of these here. You see that Crystal Burst here. Similar effect there. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. As for level 1 spells, we have some great options here with things like Tasha's Caustic Brew doing acid damage to the target. And it hits in a straight line, which is cool because you then hold a concentration and keep damaging the target with that acid damage. It's interesting. We also have things like the Hell's Lash here, which is a 4d4 of fire damage. And it tethers to the creature, dealing fire damage each turn. We also have things like the Spellfire Flare. This is actually from the Heroes of Faerun. This is included with the new Spellfire Sorcerer subclass. That class is focused on radiant and fire damage, but this one does a 2d10 of radiant damage. Giving the wizard an actual radiant damage spell is kind of amazing, considering all the great gear that can actually complement that in Baldur's Gate 3. Consumption is another cantrip that we can, or level 1 spell that we can get, and this will roll an expended hit point die. The creature takes 1d6 damage. The creature then makes a con save. At the end of each of its turns, and on a failed save, it'll take the necrotic damage, and the spell will end. We also have Crimson Lance here, which lets you create a blood weapon that counts as light finesse and a reach simple weapon using your spellcasting ability, and it'll deal a 1d6 of necrotic, and it'll last for 10 turns. You'll notice that a lot of these spells use the language of 1 minute. 1 turn in combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is 6 seconds, so 60 seconds, 1 minute is 10. And again, I said I will be talking a bit about the Sangromancer as we continue through this video, because I think this is one that a lot of people will be interested in. Another thing to note, this does work with the Book of Sorcerer mods, or if you're using like the 5e Fighter, Cleric, Ranger, Barbarian subclass combined. These mods will actually work together. And what's cool is you get the 2024 class abilities, but these mods use the 2014 rule set for most of them, so you'll get those features from the subclass. Now, the Cleric also gets some unique spells with things like Bloodbane Rune here. You target a weapon of your choice from range and scrawl onto a rune written in blood for the duration. Once per turn, when you damage a creature with a weapon, you deal an extra 1d4 of radiant damage. You also have Blood Boil, which makes the target take fire damage and cures poison. It's an interesting one, not super useful, but it's there. The Bard also gets a level 1 spell with Somnolence here, which puts creatures to a magical slumber and selects targets up for a combined 22 hit points. And the Sleep spell is different. You may notice that sounds very similar to Sleep, because Sleep is a different spell now. But again, we'll be covering that in a future video. I don't want to drag this one way out too long. The Paladin also gets Wrathful Smite that now does necrotic damage and has a new icon here, which I think is a really interesting choice. There's massive changes to Divine Smite as well here, now making it cost a bonus action, and it's not normally something you get as a Paladin. Pretty crazy changes. That's just the way that the 2024 rule set works. But just show off some of the level 1 spells here, like Hell's Lash, which you can do that fire damage onto a target, and then you chain it against them. He got lucky and didn't end up getting hit with it. But normally you'd be able to continually keep affecting him with the fire damage at the end of each turn. Bloodbane Rune is also a cool one, which lets you target a weapon of your choice with a range and then scrawl it with a rune here, which will make it do additional damage. The Bloodbane Runes will allow you to do a little bit extra damage. You can always check by going into a weapon here, right-clicking, and go down and examine to see all the buffs that you put on a weapon. Not something typically you find in normal Baldur's Gate 3, but you can do with this mod quite frequently, actually. And then also spells like the Crimson Lash here is really cool, so you can create this special weapon here, and then this will deal a little bit of extra damage, as it does pure necrotic damage. Light finesse weapon with extra reach, so you can go ahead here. Looks like a scimitar there, so yeah, and it does that damage. Poor Astarion, getting all covered in that goopy stuff. But yeah, we got a lot of cool spells acid based, because there's not a lot of amazing acid spells. This one here also requires a concentration again, but you can see it blasts away with that Tasha's Caustic Brew. And I'm removing the damage because he keeps taking damage each turn, as that's the concentration from Tasha's Caustic Brew, and it'll automatically trigger the damage. It's not like some of the other concentration spells where you have to actually activate it. Tasha's Caustic Brew actually makes acid-based casters a little bit better. Although damage over time is not very good in Baldur's Gate 3, it's actually better while using this mod. Now, level 2 spells is where we start to get a lot of more interesting options. So, Arcane Vigor, which lets you use spell slots to heal yourself. This is interesting for a wizard, which normally does not have any options for healing. And this is a bonus action, meaning that they almost have like a second wind type option now. But it does obviously require you to prepare it. Rhyme's Binding Ice, one of my favorites, a 3d8 of cold damage. This hinders targets with ice and makes it so that they do not get any movement speed, but they can do a save to be able to reduce this condition. I believe it's a Constitution save, the same as it is whenever you apply the spell. Also, if they get hit with fire, they can escape from it. It's really interesting. We also get Dragon's Breath here, which lets you do a fire damage in a cone, 15 feet, and does 3 to 18. It's a concentration as well. You can channel it to continue breathing fire. We also have, again, some changes to enhance ability too, but Mind Spike, one of my favorites. Psychic damage, again, is kind of nerfed in this game. This will do a 3d8 of psychic damage to concentration. There's also another psychic damage spell here with Tasha's Mind Whip. This one's interesting because it really makes them a lot less effective offensively, because it does the 3d8 or 3d6 of psychic, so it's less damage than Mind Spike. But on the next turn, it can either take an action or a bonus action, not both. So they basically get slowed down there, making them do a lot less damage. We also have Snollix Snowball Storm, another favorite of mine. Launch a flurry of magical snowballs that explode and damage all creatures within range. And these, you can throw 3 snowballs. It creates an ice surface. There's a lot to love with this spell. We also have Spray of Cards, another spell that I think is extremely interesting because it blinds targets on save, does a 2d10 of force damage, and it blinds targets when they don't save, but if they do save, they take half damage, so a 1d10 force. Warding Wind, a strong wind blows you around a 10-foot radius and moves with you. It extinguishes unprotected flames in the area. It becomes difficult terrain for targets that are not us. And if any attack rolls from range go through the wind, it becomes disadvantaged. Pretty cool stuff. Blood Wisp, which we saw at the start of the video. I love the VFX on this. This creates 2 Blood Wisps for each hit point die expended, so you can expend more of them, create more wisps. The wisps store unstable hemomantic power. Whenever you deal damage with a spell, once per day, 1 Blood Wisp is automatically expended. When this happens, it deals an additional 4 damage to 1 creature that hit with a spell and expends the Blood Wisp. It does a bit of extra necrotic damage. Love it. It's a really interesting way to enhance your spells. We also got the Sanguine's Shield here. You draw life force from those injured around you to create a swirling shield of blood. Each creature within your 9 meters view that is missing any of its hit points must make a con save. On failed save, it takes 1d6 necrotic damage. On successful save, it takes half as much, and then you gain a 2d6 of temporary health. So another sustain move that does a pretty good amount of damage. We also got the Theft of Vitae here. So when a creature you can see within 9 meters of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to deal 2 to 12 necrotic damage to that creature. You then gain a number of temporary health points equal to a 2d6 temporary health. The necrotic spells here are actually kind of nicely balanced to give yourself some extra sustain, where they normally are not that great in Baldur's Gate 3, so it's interesting. And with the Sangromancer Wizard, you actually get to select a number of different spells here that are related to the necromancy and transmutation. I love it. And again, I'll be doing a future video where I talk about the changes to spells with things like Prayer of Healing from the Cleric, now providing your team with a short rest. Amazing changes. Now, another spell that certain classes get is called Find Steed. This is available to things like the Paladin here. You summon an otherworldly being that is appearing as a loyal steed. The steed enhances your attacks, defense, and movement speed. You can also fall off the horse. I also want to quickly mention there is a mod for photo mode that adds horses to the game, but unfortunately they aren't actual real horses. That's just not really something that's possible at the current moment, maybe in the future, but when you summon this in, it's an actual ox. It's pretty cool. So we have our steed here, and then when we have the steed in, we can actually mount it. So you have to apply it to the steed. You are then a mounted rider, which you must succeed a dexterity save of DC 8 or fall off the mount and then become, you lose your movement speed. And here's a Sanguine Shield here, which lets you give yourself that extra temporary health there. You can only have temporary health source from one place at a time, just a heads up on that. The Blood Wisp spell, as I mentioned, I love this one. Just the cool VFX that happens around your character whenever you pop that there. And again, there are many changes to some of the base game spells that are changed to level 2. And here's our Dragon Breath too. As mentioned, you do get options for some different types of Dragon Breath. You imbue yourself with it, and then it pops down here on the side, and you get that big cone of Dragon Breath there. So pretty cool stuff. There's also Rhyme's Binding Ice here, and you can see the radius is pretty large, like a cone of cold with extra range, and you blast away with that cold damage. We also then have our Spray of Cards, which can blind targets and it hits in an area of effect in the front there, doing force damage, again, blinding targets. Pretty useful. And then the Warding Wind will create a little tornado. There's been some other spells similar to this one, and you just hit away with it around your character there, and then you have this wind, and it creates that Warding Wind on the targets there. So yeah, this will make it so that any ranged attack rolls through this area will get disadvantaged. Now, level 3 spells, we can turn ourselves pretty much into Magneto. We got Extract Iron, which will allow you to extract the iron within a blood flowing within a target's body, forming a metallic shard that tears its way out. That's horrifying. Surprising, it only does a 66 of damage, but hey, that sounds pretty excruciating. We also have other spells like the Thunder Step here, which you can teleport to a visible unoccupied space within range. When you leave, creature within 9 meters of your starting point will take thunder damage. And it can also push them back. I guess the pushbacks if you have like reverberation gear on it. I've used this spell in the past. It allows you to also take a creature of your size or smaller and within 1.5 meters of you, provided there's space for them at the destination. This is nice. It's like a Misty Step that gives you a little extra damage. We also got the Summon Fae Blink Dog here, which lets you get a summon. There's also the Phantom Steed, similar to the other horse, but this one's invisible, so this is cool. It's an invisible cow. There's also Flame Arrows, which lets you imbue an arrow with additional 1d6 of fire damage, and you get 12 pieces of these, and you can continually keep firing them away. And you can also give this to a teammate if you want to buff up your archer. There's also Ashelard's Stride here. Now, this is different from the Mr. Spells version, so this is a Building Flame of the Dragon Blast from our feet, granting you explosive speed for the duration. You get 6 meters more movement speed, and you don't proc opportunity attacks. And when you move within 5 meters of a target that isn't being carried or worn, it takes 1 to 6 fire damage from the trail of your heat. Pretty cool stuff. The Mr. Spells let you dash with it, but this one gives you more movement. Interesting. And the Sorcerer and the Warlock get access to Telekinetic Crush, doing a 5d6 of force damage, creating a field, and knocks targets prone for a turn. This is a nice spell, because force damage, there's not many options outside Eldritch Blast, but hey, this is pretty cool. Now also alongside this Spray of Cards. And Telekinetic Crush will look like this. It has that huge area of effect here that we can blast away with, and it'll do force damage in that area. And it creates a big shake like that. You really feel the weight of that spell. Now, we also have some other things here, like our Phantom Steed, which lets us, again, target ourselves, creating this ghostly steed here, which we can then, again, reclaim. And this gives us even more damage onto our attacks, more movement speed, and we also have a chance of falling off of this again. Now, level 4 brings some very interesting ones into the mix here, because Reluthum Psychic Lance. This is really good. It does a 76 of force, or psychic damage, which is not as good, again, as previously in Baldur's Gate, but it will incapacitate the target for 2 turns, so it just takes them out of the fight pretty well. Nice spell. We also have Arcane Eye. This lets us scout ahead. It's basically like the Scrying Eye, and you can just move forwards with it. It just can't get attacked. So, interesting one there. There's also the Storm Sphere, doing bludgeoning and lightning damage. As a concentration, the targets will then do a strength saving throw and take 2 to 12 bludgeoning damage in that, and it's difficult terrain. There's also the Intellect Devourer Summon Aberration. This would have made a lot of sense to have in Baldur's Gate 3. I guess us kind of by extension is this spell, but it's a good one. There's also the Summon Construct Animated Armor. This is like one of the floating armors that you see inside the Sorceress Sundries. It's good. Summons, I'm a fan of. Vitriolic Sphere. 10d4 of acid damage plus a 5d4, which you shoot a green arrow at, covers the target ground. It does that damage immediately, 10 to 40, and then half as much damage on the next turn. Not half as much, but a 5d4 of acid damage on the next turn. And there's also things like the Circle of Scarlet. Now, this is available for the Sangromancer Wizard. This does a 10d6 of plus 3 necrotic damage, and this will create a pillar and do a Constitution saving throw. Pretty solid amount of damage for a level 4 spell and the area effect. And the Circle of Scarlet here, this is what the spell looks like. Again, very large area of effect, and you can blast away there. Boom! It's almost like if you were to use the Circle of Death. It's got a very large area of effect. There's also things like Reluthum Cyclic Lance. I really like the spell again because you incapacitate a target, does that psychic damage there, and then it has them all strung up. We also have the Vitriolic Sphere here, which also has a large area of effect, and it will, you see there, do some acid damage to create that acidy surface. Then we also have our animated armor here, again, similar to the stuff that you see in the Sorcerer's Sundries there. and they got 56 health there. They can do a ranged attack or a main hand attack. Not a lot of damage, but that's not what they're meant to do. They're there for you to soak up hits with, and you can then also summon in a brain. So yeah, that is a concentration. All summons are. Elementals are also a summon here, but this is a us that's got 40 health here. It's got the Devour Intellect, Synaptic Discharge, and the Claw attack. So yeah, now you don't have to worry about getting us earlier on the game. Level 5, though, has my favorite spells. Bigsby's Hand. This is one that wasn't available in Mistress Spells previously. This does a 5d8 of force damage with its attacks. It can also push creatures within 5 feet of it. It does an attack. It's an object with 20 armor class, so it's actually a really good summon. And it lasts for 10 turns, but it's a concentration. There's also Danse Macabre. This is similar to the one that you get from the Necromancy of Thay. However, this version you can control, so they're not running around just beating up everyone without your choice. There's also the Enervation here, which is a 4d8 of necrotic damage. A tendril of inky darkness reaches out from you, touching a creature you can see and drains life from it. Until the spell ends, you can use your action on each of your turns to automatically deal a 4d8 of necrotic to the target. Whenever the spell deals damage to a target, you regain hit points equal to half the amount damaged. Steel Wind Strike, enough said. We all know this one. It's you can attack 5 different targets. It does a 16-10 of force damage. You jump around making separate attack rolls against each target. It's a crazy strong spell. It's notorious for a reason. There's also Summon a Dragon Spirit. Now, another thing about dragons is there's a Circle of Dragons Druid subclass, which lets you actually turn into a dragon. Pretty cool stuff, too. Summon Dragon lets you summon in an actual dragon. Amazing. We also have Synaptic Static. This is a really good spell because it's a large area of effect, and it does an 86 of psychic damage. Although psychic damage is pretty nerfed, it does lose a bit of its combat effectiveness. Wall of Force. Nothing can physically pass through the wall. It's immune to all damage. It cannot be dispelled. A lot of interesting choices you could probably make with this one here, as you can block enemies completely. And here is the Summon Dragon. So a bit of a step up from the us. This has 50 health here. It's got a Flame Breath attack that it can do, so it can attack a target with that, or do its multi-attack, which will burn targets, depending on the Draconic Spirit that you summon in. Now, Steel Wind Strike, as mentioned, really crazy spell because you can hit 5 targets, and it does those separate attack rolls, which can crit. You jump around, dealing force damage. It's a very powerful spell. And Bigsby's Hand, this is an awesome spell, again, because it previously was not an easy one to get in Baldur's Gate 3, especially on Mod.io. But it's got the Bigsby's Hand there, which you can use to attack with. It pushes them back. It shows that it does bludgeoning, but it's showing there as well force damage. You can have it throw water bottles and things like that. Although water bottles are not as good as they once were in Baldur's Gate 3, it does have some options in combat. It can push targets around. And then the Wall of Force here. So you can go ahead here, creating a wall, here we go. You can create this big glowing wall here that's just going to block everyone from going through this area for the enemies. So yeah, it's a concentration you can hold here, immune to all damage. So you can get real creative with it if you need to go, hide out some bears and set a wall up while you're in combat. You got a lot of funny options you can now do. Now for level 6 spells, it makes changes to 3 of the base game spells and adds 2 new spells. Fizzband's Platinum Shield. You create a field of silvery light that surrounds creatures of your choice. The target gains resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, and poison. If the target is subjected to an effect that makes it do a dexterity save to take only half damage, instead it takes no damage on a half save and only half on a failed save. As a bonus action on subsequent turns, you move the field to another creature. So this is just basically a teleporting around, a vulnerability reducer, or being able to protect your teammates by giving them resistance to those elemental damage choices. Now, that's a cool choice, because Globe of Invulnerability, which is previously one of the more broken spells in the game, is also nerfed, because targets can now hit you with level 6 spells and other abilities they previously weren't able to. So that does make things like this sound a lot better on paper, because you can now protect your team from elemental damage. Mind you, it's only taking half elemental damage. You got to move it around, and it's a bonus action to move it around, while also holding your concentration and using up a level 6 spell slot. It's an option. There's also Tensor's Transformation, which lets you imbue yourself with magical endurance and martial prowess. For the duration of the spell, you cannot cast spells and get 50 temporary hit points. You have advantage on attack rolls you make with weapons, and when you hit a target with a weapon attack, it takes an additional 2d12 force damage. You gain proficiency with all armor, shields, and martial weapons, as well as strength and constitution saving throws. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can attack twice instead of once, unless you already have the benefit of an extra attack that grants additional attacks. So basically, it turns you from being just a really good spellcaster into a really good melee attacker with extra attacks that do extra force damage. This is a concentration, but you also get benefits to holding your concentration, so yeah, I'd say the juice is worth the squeeze. So here is Fizzband's Platinum Shield. So after hitting on teammates a few times, I think it's only right to now give them this defensive ability. 10 turns of resistance to damage. And we got that bonus action that lets us pop it around to somebody else. So yeah, if you need to protect someone else, you can then flop it around and give them that safety. And you can see there we got the 10 turns of resistances, and it's also magical resistance. So it's a pretty solid option. Intenser's transformation. So again, a buff onto herself. This then gives us those weapon attacks that do additional damage, and we can do multiple attacks per weapon attack. We got that advantage on the attack there. So boom, didn't do a whole lot of damage, but we'll try that again. You see we have the 2d12 of extra force damage, which is really nice. I guess I have the Fizzband's Platinum Shield still on. It's kind of funny. I'm somehow able to do the concentration on both at the same time. Not quite sure how, but yeah, he does have resistances to the physical or elemental damage types. So we're not rolling like crazy amounts of damage here. But you see, we got 2 attacks per action now, much like a martial fighter. It may not be in your best interest to attack as a spellcaster, but this does have some value on different spellcasters that might want to do something like this. Blade Singing wouldn't really like benefit a massive amount because they already get the extra attack, but it's an interesting choice. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking this out. And one last quick note about spells and scrolls in particular. So scrolls can actually only be cast by certain classes. This is to prevent things like a barbarian from spamming chain lightning. And yeah, this does make some changes, and classes like the Arcane Trickster, Eldritch Knight, Spell Slinger, and Architect Rune are allowed to use wizard scrolls. You can see all this on their GitHub page, but that is the D&D Player's Handbook 2024 All-in-One Beyond, and all the new spells included. There's also changes to the base game spells. We'll be covering that in a future video. That makes up the 130 changes overall to the game. There's, again, so many changes to classes and subclasses, so stay tuned for future content where I break all of that down. There's so much great stuff here, and it's a different rule set. If you played Baldur's Gate 3 a ton of times, it may be fun to play a more balanced and different experience with the 2024 Player's Handbook rule set by Yoonmoonsik here. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch you all in the next video.